Should she tell him that she was potentially one of the 3 Tiridan expected for millennia by their people? Worse, she was a latent nemesis, linked to that which destroys, the third face of their despised god. Even without trying, how could she help but cause trouble? Some things need to be broken. That was hard to explain, however, when standing up to one's knees in the rubble that had been someone else's life. And Tori hadn't helped matters by summoning her back to Gothragor prematurely. Renewed unease and anger pricked her. Perhaps he meant to sabotage her chances with the Randon, she thought. Not for the first time. If they finally accepted her, he would no longer be able to strip her of the rank that she had fought so hard to achieve. Not at least without insulting the Kencyr warrior class, who so far supported him and whom he held in high regard. Without that status, though, what prevented him from dumping her back into the women's world, where highborn girls were nothing but chattel to be contracted out for the greatest political gain? Maybe, however, the matriarchs could stop Torisen from foisting her on them again. No doubt they remembered all too well the miserable winter that Jame had spent in their halls when she had first rejoined the Kencyrath. A certain young sewing instructress was still prone to hysterics whenever her name was mentioned, or so Jame had heard. A faint aroma made her stomach growl. Her brother's dinner, untouched, sat on the table in a nest of papers. Cold roast chicken, bread, and cheese. Although it was hard to tell with his back turned, she thought that he looked thinner than when she had last seen him almost a year ago, and he had always been slender. They shared that trait. People always underestimated them because of it. But this time, perhaps, it was something else. When Torisen's steward, Rowan, had delivered his order that Jame attend him immediately upon her arrival, the scar-faced Randon had added in a low voice, "Blackie hasn't been quite himself since the end of winter. Walk wary." At winter's end, Tori would have learned about Brier. Dark shapes flitted past outside the window as sparrows came home to roost in the vines that climbed the tower. A breeze rustled ivy leaves. On the table, the haphazard pile of correspondence stirred. Jame noted that on many of the scrolls, the wax seal was intact. She wondered if their cousin, Kindry Soulwalker, was still acting as her brother's scribe. They had decided not to make it common knowledge that the white-haired Shanir was in truth a pure-blooded, legitimate North, one of only 3 survivors of that ancient house from which the High Lord had always come. People might get ideas. If Torisen had pushed Kindry away again, though. Their father, Ganth, had taught him to fear those of the old blood. Like Kindry, like Jame herself. She knew that, in some moods, she was indeed to be feared. But surely her twin brother with his bound household was Shanir himself. How could he not see that? She had walked in his dreams and in his soulscape, had felt the tension between harsh childhood lessons and adult responsibilities. He was a good man at heart, she told herself, doing his best to manage the flawed society which the Kencyrath had become. He needed her to sweep away the dead wood of the past, and Kindry to preserve that which was still worthwhile. But how could he, while the ghost of their father whispered poison through the door in his soul image, which she herself had locked? A drop of blood trembled on a knife's tip, falling into a cup of wine. "Here, son. Drink to my health." Had Ganth tried to blood-bind the young Tory, as their foul Uncle Greshon had his younger brother Ganth? Did that explain the festering paternal splinter in Tory's soul? If so, how did one root out such a thing? "You spoke?" said Jame sharply. "I said, don't touch those." Without thinking, she had reached out to steady the shifting mound of papers. She drew back her hand. "You claim that we had an agreement," he said, his back still turned, his voice roughening, as if it caught in his throat. "If so, it was based on the assumption that you could be trusted. Father said you would steal my people."